Hi, everyone. Welcome to using Wikipedia to jumpstart students' engagement in a 12-week course. I'm Meredith Wolnick, and I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning and the Robertson Media Center, a makerspace, at the University of Virginia Library in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm responsible for our information and media literacy programs, and I teach information literacy classes across the curriculum in university seminar classes like the one we'll be talking about today.
Hi, and I'm Bethany Mickel, teaching and instructional design librarian, also at the University of Virginia Library. I work with faculty and students to integrate sound instructional design as well as information literacy within their courses. So here's a quick overview of what we'll be covering during today's session. We'll provide you with a snapshot of who we are in terms of our university's structure. We'll give you an overview of how university seminar courses fit within the curriculum, why we selected Wikipedia editing as the basis for our students' final projects. We'll take a closer look at the exact course that we taught, what our students took away from the experience, as well as what we learned ourselves. We'll spend some time exploring single session ideas that you can use in your own classes before providing some links that will be to a helpful resource folder. We invite you, of course, to join us later in the conference at the question and answer session. But for now, we're going to turn our cameras off for the remainder of the presentation, but we'll see you at the end.
At the University of Virginia, librarians do not typically teach full-term classes. Usually we teach single classes in the writing and research courses throughout the curriculum. We support first-year instruction class requests for approximately 4,250 students each year, and we provide instructional design and teaching support for liaison librarians. A university seminar is a full 12-week term course. The application is lengthy and requires a syllabus, learning objectives, evidence of probable success, and each instructor's CV. Of the 8 to 10 university seminars that are accepted each year, typically only one is taught by a librarian. Because of that, we wanted to design a 12-week course with elements that could be repurposed into a one-shot session. Typically, courses are capped at 18 students, and they draw students at all levels, creating a mix of experience in academic research and scholarly understanding.
We started with learning objectives, and we knew first off that we wanted students to be able to do the following: to distinguish between fact and opinion and truth and misinformation, to use the university's resources to locate and appropriately use peer-reviewed and scholarly resources, to understand the impact of power and privilege on the creation, dissemination, and preservation of information, and to assess a body of knowledge on a contemporary social issue and apply the research skills learned to create and present a summative project.
So why did we select Wikipedia editing for our students' semester-long project? We were seeking a non-traditional form of scholarship and for students to see their work live beyond a traditional research paper. And to that end, students picked from a list of articles that Bethany and I pre-selected that were START or C-class articles. And we wanted to choose articles relevant to the students, whether they were local to us, like the regionally controversial Atlantic Coast Pipeline, or hot button topics like the Me Too movement. In case you're not familiar with START and C-class articles, like me, here's a quick definition. START articles have a usable amount of good content, but are weak in many areas. And if you go to the talk page in the upper left of any given Wikipedia article, you can see what edits have been made, any conversation about those edits, and if it's an article that Wikipedia has determined needs improvement, you'll see a box like this one at the top. C-class articles may have some gaps or missing elements, need editing for clarity, balance, or flow, or contain policy violations such as bias or original research. Rather than being an entire course, we wanted the Wikipedia project to be scaffolded by weekly discussions, guest speakers, and readings. Class sessions involved reflections on readings and topics such as privilege and access to information, the legal aspects of information use, sharing, and creation, data mining in the census, primary sources, as well as emerging technologies' impact on research. Speakers were invited from throughout the university and the library, including a data scientist who discussed census results and impact, a copyright lawyer, a digital humanist, and our university Wikimedian in residence, who is responsible for coordinating Wikipedia editing events on our campus and doing outreach events for courses such as ours. He provided context about Wikipedia in developing countries, challenged students to think about access to information, and discussed the Wikipedia community of editors, concepts of neutrality, and monitoring of inaccurate, malicious, or biased information. The components of the culminating Wikipedia project included finished article edits, a post-spring break meeting, a reflection, an annotated bibliography, and a presentation.
The article editing made up the bulk of the students' project. Students chose from a range of topics such as LGBTQ participation in the Olympic and Paralympic Games, as well as the gender pay gap. During our own acclimation to Wikipedia, we learned to evaluate students on attempts versus what stuck in terms of their actual edits. The student selected topics did need to be researched with an eye towards accuracy, content gaps, the currency of information, and the authority of sources. We also had one-to-one meetings to provide a check-in point, and students were required to establish one of these meetings with us. During these meetings, we discussed their progress, and we also identified any sticking points and worked towards resolution. Due to the small class size, we were able to foster more of a one-to-one connection with our students and really get to know them.
The final project required a bibliography with at least 5 sources that were used or evaluated for use in the Wikipedia process. We provided students with background instruction on how to construct an annotated bibliography, and we also asked students to write a 1-page reflection describing what they learned during the research process and how their perception of the scholarly conversation had changed. In their reflection papers and post-class evaluations, it was clear that students were pleased with the idea that many people could see their work, not just the professors, and that it had lasting value. Bethany and I were delighted that the students showed both mastery of content and transferable skill building. We initially gave students 10 to 15 minutes for their presentation to showcase their Wikipedia article and take questions. With the onset of the pandemic, we transformed the presentation into a 5-minute video, and students generally did a great job converting their presentations and had plenty of questions and comments for their fellow students.
The pandemic-driven shift online required quick thinking on our feet as we moved the scheduled one-to-one meetings to Zoom and created instructional materials to support students in presenting their final projects online. We also restructured the planned in-class presentations to online viewings and utilized discussion forums for student interaction as well as question and answers. So what did we discover about the experience? Well, we learned that it was important for students to have start or see class articles and to avoid locked articles, which are articles that are either fully developed or even more commonly ones that relate to controversial people or topics. And we were delighted, of course, to see that student engagement increased. Impact beyond the classroom has resulted in positive feedback in their course evaluations and in the fact that many students continue to edit their articles. At the conclusion of the course, we saw a total of 21 articles edited by 17 student editors, making a total of 421 total edits, close to 17,000 words added, 190 references included, as well as close to 630,000 article views to date.
Since the majority of our classes are one-shots, we wanted to be sure that all of the work we put into the class and the positive takeaways that students had could be transformed into 50 to 75-minute sessions. While we haven't had the opportunity to put this into practice yet, we identified 3 types of classes and learning objectives that we and you could use in future courses. The first is understanding information gaps. We identified these learning objectives, analyze a Wikipedia article for information gaps, develop keywords related to the article, apply Boolean search logic to keyword searches, and to complete a database search for relevant information. Prior to class, choose a C-class article and divide class time into 3 sections as follows. In the first section, as a large group, discuss the issues surrounding gaps in research and ask students to brainstorm how people read, find, think through, and evaluate information. In the second part of class, in small groups of 3 to 4, use a short question sheet to identify gaps in the example article. Third, have students research to find one source to fill a gap, and using their worksheet, explain what purpose their source fulfills. Have each group report out.
Another concept that we wanted to emphasize was that of information having value. For this one shot, we identified the following learning objectives: identifying voices missing or marginalized in Wikipedia, defining the terms notability and reliable sources, and explaining how Wikipedia's policies and guidelines contribute to its gender gap in knowledge. For this activity, we explored Project Cora and identified an excellent activity from Alyssa Acosta. Some pre-work is required for this class session, and we recommend that students read about systemic bias and gender bias both as Wikipedia entries and within specific article selections that we list within our lesson overview. At the start of the class, students will examine and analyze Wikipedia articles using each article's talk page. You can select the articles the students review or ask them to select one related to their topic. Either in small groups or as a class, discuss the articles with a focus on what students observe about the neutrality of Wikipedia and whether gender bias is noted in either the talk page or within the articles themselves. There are some excellent starter questions in the Project Cora lesson plan that we'll link to within our resource folder. In the second half of the session, then have students work in pairs to examine 2 different Wikipedia articles of your choosing. Use that worksheet that's provided in the lesson plan to have students respond to the questions. Alyssa has included worksheets for both shorter and longer classes and questions that should prompt discussion after the students complete their worksheet. The session then can be concluded with an introduction to your own library's research resources.
And a final one-shot lesson suggestion for source evaluation with the following learning objectives. Identify a focus for further research and exploration, utilize divergent and convergent thinking while searching, understand how information systems are organized, and evaluate an article and optionally referenced articles for accuracy and relevance. This is an asynchronous option, and you can consider the following activity focused on evaluating sources using a series of questions. First, students should view or read content related to Wikipedia and its aim of source neutrality. In the lesson overview in the resource folder we'll provide, we've included some suggested videos and readings. Next, students will either select an article of interest, or you can assign them a specific article that relates to the class theme. They will then be tasked with scanning the Wikipedia article and evaluating it based on the provided questions in a form we've created. As a follow-up, an instructor may require students to follow the same evaluative process with one of the referenced articles. The tool we've created for you is a Google form that will be available in our resource folder. The added bonus is that students can email themselves and their librarian or course instructor the completed questions once finished.
We've talked a lot about a number of resources throughout our presentation, and we welcome you to take a closer look at our resource folder that includes our syllabus, rubrics, one-shot ideas, and other helpful documents. We look forward to the opportunity to continue the conversation with you. We hope you can join us at the conference for the question and answer session, but regardless, please do feel free to reach out to either one of us to talk more about our work with Wikipedia or the work that we do at the University of Virginia Library. Thanks so much for joining us today.